Ethan had always been more comfortable with numbers than feelings. A software engineer from Chicago, he often found himself puzzled by human emotions, especially those involving romance and attraction. He had a small circle of close friends, but when it came to women, he was famously clueless. That was until the last few months, when he started noticing subtle changes in the way Claire acted around him. Claire had been part of Ethan's life for years. They met in college during a group project, and over time, a steady friendship blossomed between them. She was smart, funny, and fiercely independent, with a laugh that lit up any room. For Ethan, Claire was the kind of friend he could talk to about anything: work frustrations, family, even his favorite video games. But recently, he sensed something different. Something unspoken in the way she looked at him and interacted. One chilly autumn afternoon, Ethan sat across from Claire at their usual coffee shop. The smell of roasted beans filled the air, and warm sunlight streamed through the window. He watched her carefully as she listened to the story about the latest coding challenge at work. Then it happened. Their eyes met, and instead of looking away, she held his gaze with a softness he hadn't noticed before. Ethan realized this was the first sign. When a woman is thinking about you constantly, her eyes tend to find you without effort. It's more than just casual glances. It's a silent connection, a subtle message carried in the way she looks at you, with care, curiosity, and maybe even a little hope. From that day forward, Ethan began paying attention. He noticed how Claire's eyes sought his across crowded rooms, how she seemed to light up whenever he was near. At work events, during group dinners, or even quick coffee breaks, her gaze found him, holding just long enough to make his heart beat faster. The second sign was her smile. Ethan thought he knew what Claire's smile looked like, but recently it had changed. It wasn't the quick, polite smile she gave others. It was warmer, more genuine, like a secret shared just between them. When she smiled at him, it felt like a quiet celebration of their connection. One evening, after a long day at work, Ethan and Claire met up at the park near her apartment. The leaves crunched beneath their feet as they walked, the cold air sharp but refreshing. Claire laughed at a joke he made, and Ethan caught the way her eyes crinkled with delight. That smile, it stayed with him long after they parted ways. But it wasn't just the smiles and glances. The third sign that Ethan noticed was Claire's attention to detail. She remembered things about him that he barely mentioned in passing, like the time he casually said he liked jazz music, and a few days later she surprised him with tickets to a local jazz concert. Or when he mentioned he preferred a certain kind of coffee, and she showed up with that exact brew in hand the very next morning. This attention to the little things was not just kindness. It was proof that she was thinking about him deeply and often, storing every detail like precious treasures. As the days passed, Ethan noticed something else: subtle touches. When they walked side by side, Claire would sometimes brush her hand lightly against his arm or rest her hand on his shoulder, brief but meaningful contacts that sent a warmth spreading through him. These were not accidental. They were quiet signals of affection, ways to bridge the space between friendship and something more. One weekend, while they were out hiking with friends, Ethan felt that touch. Claire steadied him as he stumbled over a root, her fingers lingering on his arm just a second longer than necessary. That moment, simple as it was, made Ethan's pulse race. The fifth sign revealed itself in the conversations they shared. Claire started opening up in ways she never had before. She talked about her hopes, her fears, her childhood memories, personal things she usually kept guarded. This invitation into her inner world was a sign that Ethan was becoming more than just a friend. She trusted him and wanted him to understand her deeply. Late one night, after a long conversation over coffee, Ethan realized that Claire was letting him see parts of herself she usually kept hidden from the world. It was a gift and a sign she was thinking about him constantly, not just in passing but in ways that mattered. Finally, the sixth sign was Claire's protective nature. Whenever Ethan had a rough day, she was the first to notice. She sent messages to check on him, offered to listen without judgment, and stood by him quietly through the challenges. This kind of care showed that he was on her mind, especially when he needed support the most. One rainy evening, when Ethan's project at work hit a major snag, Claire was there with comforting words and a warm meal. She didn't push him to talk, but simply stayed by his side, reminding him he wasn't alone. As weeks turned into months, Ethan's feelings for Claire grew stronger. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset from the rooftop of her apartment building, Ethan took a deep breath and asked her directly if she had been thinking about him as much as he had been thinking about her. Claire smiled shyly and nodded. She admitted that all those little signs, the looks, the smiles, the touches, were her way of showing her feelings without rushing into words. For her, thinking about Ethan constantly was a quiet, steady flame that burned beneath the surface. Ethan felt a new confidence bloom inside him. He realized that when a woman is thinking about you deeply, she shows it in ways that don't always need to be spoken aloud. The signs are woven into her actions, her presence, and the little moments you share. From that day on, Ethan and Claire's relationship blossomed naturally, built on years of friendship and the deep, unspoken feelings that had been there all along. Ethan learned that paying attention to the subtle signs could open the door to something truly meaningful, a love that grows quietly but powerfully.